Welcome to the Atheists of Florida YouTube channel. We are pleased to offer some of the most significant speakers and profound issues of our times. If you like today's video, please hit the like button. If you have already subscribed, thank you. If not, you know what to do.
Okay, thank you. Although I enjoy seeing everyone else, I'd like to thank some of you. Can you see on your screen my name and address and email address? Is the sharing working?
Yes, yeah.
You're good.
First, let me say to all of you, I am both flattered and honored to be asked and thrilled to have you or join you as we raise voices together to return some sanity to some of the things going on here in Florida. You may feel free to contact me at any time, and if contact me at that email address, rabbi, and then the zip code here in Palm Coast is 32164@gmail.com. I'll be happy to send you copies of all these slides as well. I think Judy has them. We need to work together. I am eager to do so. So I am, in a way, the outcome of, I don't know if I can say specifically, I'm representing Americans United for Separation of Church and State, now 75 years old. It's based in Washington. One of the things that we have, of course, encountered is that when we have activities and take action here in Florida, everyone says, oh, that's some corporation in the Beltway in DC. Local voices are most important. And if you'd like to become involved, you're more than welcome. This is my wife, Robin. And by the way, that those stars, whatever they are, is because the picture was taken by one of our grandchildren. I wouldn't know how to do that myself. And this is our older daughter, Sarah, who lives in New York City, and our younger daughter, Amy, who lives in Jacksonville. The only relevance they really have to this, what we're doing right now, is to recognize that Robin and I have raised these two daughters through their teenage years. And therefore, if you want to make me most comfortable, you'll interrupt me while I'm speaking. So feel absolutely comfortable, yell, scream, wave your hand. And if I don't see you and somebody else does, please interrupt me. It's perfectly all right. And we can be casual and relaxed about all of this. So Americans United for Separation of Church and State, I'm going to, by the way, A, I don't know what I'm doing when I make a PowerPoint. And B, I loathe people who give me a written text and call me to a meeting and then read the text to me when I can read it myself. But as I say, Americans United for Separation of Church and State is there for people, most notably at the end, who we want to preserve the principle of freedom of religion, including the right to believe and the right not to believe, which is not quite as protected as the right to believe. We are people from every orientation. One of the things that distinguishes us from other similar groups, freedom from religion people, for example, is not only are we not hostile to religion, but for many years, our CEO, Barry Lynn, ordained by the Church of Christ, and 1/3 of our national board are members of the clergy. So we are not, when editorials and newspapers appear calling us the tools of Satan, we can say, au contraire, we are not tools of Satan. So we are eager to have religion not dictate public policy, and that may be one of the issues we are dealing with today, and that the government doesn't tell us what to believe or how to practice our faith. We envision, again, you don't need me to read this, and if you'd like to go back a slide or two or three, or I'll send you these slides, it would be my pleasure. Most important, we're a not-for-profit educational advocacy organization, and we have involved peoples of all faiths, all religions, and of course, no religion at all. So now let's go to the present case. And here is an article, let me move something out of the way from me, that comes from the Washington Post And it says that there's a training that went on for a new curriculum here in Florida. And one of the emphases of the training is that teachers need to know that religion, and teachers need to teach that religion belongs in public life. And I can feel blood boiling already. Let's see. So the article goes on. A new civics training comes with a dose of Christian dogma, and it sanitizes history. It promotes inaccuracies. You recognize, I need to tell you who that is in the picture in the lower right-hand corner. That's our Governor Ron DeSantis. The initiative is called the Florida Civics and Debate Initiative. That's the package that is being foisted in terms of teacher training. It's appearing in our public schools. Remember, and we'll see that, well, here it talks about a foundation. It's being paid for in the end by you and by me, that we are, through the power of taxation, the state is taking our money and then creating a program that promotes not just religion, but it promotes Christianity in particular. Interestingly, you'll see here, $5 million comes from the Marcus Foundation. If you're not sure of who the Marcus Foundation is, the bottom line, Bernie Marcus is one of the two partners who founded a little store front called Home Depot. And he sold out. He's no longer connected with Home Depot. And I'm not advocating boycotting or anything like that, but just realize that that's it. By the way, Marcus is well identified as a Jew and supports many Jewish organizations as well. So the mission from the website of the Florida Civics and Debate Initiative is to have the best civics education for our students in curriculum, debate, and high quality teachers. That does not change the fact, only marginally relevant here, that if we rank the states by what they pay teachers, we are 44th out of 50. So high quality teachers, we have to honor, respect, and hold in the highest esteem our public school teachers, but the really good ones head to other places because of the nature of the relationship between our state government and our teachers in part, even our local governments as well. So included in the training now, let me say that I have not seen, and getting a hold of this curriculum is a bit problematic in that it's available to you if you want to lie and say that you're a teacher and give some kind of credentials and so on. So Americans United for Separation of Church and State has filed a Freedom of Information Act request and is on its way, but their feet are being dragged and delays and impediments are being placed in the way. But Americans United for Separation of Church and State in its Washington office are eagerly awaiting the entire curriculum and all of the details so that they can examine it. So we only know what teachers report who have attended the trainings, particularly those in South Florida. So including in the training is this statement that it is a misconception that the founders of our country desired strict separation of church and state. And the little meme on the right-hand side will it tells you all you need to know. The same in this slide as well. Broward County teacher Richard Judd was interviewed after the training and said they were told, this is the way you should think. I'm very proud of my association with the Freethought Society, the North Florida Freethought Society in Jacksonville. I read their column for their paper, and they say, "How could you're a rabbi? You're a man of the club. You're a man of God. How could you be involved in with three atheists and so on?" And I constantly respond and say, any organization that has the word thought in its name is as an organization with which I want to be associated, because there is so little thinking and going on in our world today. And I think you'll find that proven by the little we know about this particular program. So the Miami Herald reported, and teachers go and for 3 days get a $700 stipend and are eligible for $300 bonus and $30,000 bonus. And as you see, next year, $106 million of yours and mine, taxpayer dollars. Many things our governor wants to believe. He's sending, what, $450 checks and he's doing this. It's not him. You're paying for it. I'm paying for it. And we should have standing as far as is concerned, but in fact, legally, we do not have standing, and that's been adjudicated in the courts. We'll talk about the courts a little bit later. So Anna Fusco was the president of the Broward Teachers Union, went to the training and was told, or reports that it was basically this way or no way, and it is only one side of American history. By the way, you'll notice the word debate is found in the title of the initiative, yet there's only one side, and that's the right side, according to the curriculum. The kind of slip in the Christian values piece, ignoring the fact that the country is made up of so many different religions. I want to note, as we're talking before we began, that we need to all be careful about conflating, if we're opposed to religion and Christianity, not to conflate the words Christian and religion. There are other religions, and some of them think the way non-believers think, and others think just the way Christians do. And but be careful about that differentiation. That might be my own personal bugaboo, but it's something to be concerned. So here's a teacher, it's being blocked by mine. Abe Lopez says, I use this as a blank slate, but help my students understand that rights are intrinsic and do not come from a man, do not come from the government. Our rights come from a creator. Yeah, and that's part of what this is. So, you know, yeah, I feel the same. I don't know who said that, but yes. Of course, part of their banner comes from the Declaration of Independence, that we're endowed by our creator with certain unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Lopez said when he was in a speech to the group that was there being trained, and once you acknowledge that your rights come from a creator, they can't be taken away by a or a government. This also, this has Second Amendment implications, that the government is, we need to be concerned that the government is going to take away our rights. Well, let me take that back. Most of my life, that was not a problem. Perhaps now in the past few months or years, it is becoming a problem. And that's why we need to work in coordination and raise our voices together. I'll talk later about what goes on at the ballot box, but Vice President Harris is absolutely correct when she says democracy is on the ballot this year in November, and for us on August 23rd as well. Newt Gingrich, if you don't know who Newt Gingrich is, you can look it up. Our rights come from our creator. You don't need to look past that line. Excuse me 1 second, it is not working. Okay, this is next article is or pieces from the Florida Phoenix. If you're not, I have no interest in the Florida Phoenix, no financial interest. You can subscribe to it, and it keeps you up to date on what's going on in Tallahassee. And Danielle Brown wrote in the Florida Phoenix, The civics training ignites questions of religious indoctrination, separation of church and state. And later she'll make mention of a concept, and I'll be happy to come back and talk about this if you're not fully familiar with Christian nationalism. And in fact, if you're not fully familiar with what goes on at Pensacola Christian College, you should be. But the movement of Christian nationalism is all around us to take every element of our society and put it under the umbrella of Christian nationalism, that ours is a Christian country. And to quote Pat Buchanan, the Constitution of the United States works best if everybody's a Christian. And of course, that's opposed to pluralist democracy. Here's a statement from DeSantis that tells us something, but also tells us how his thing, well, you see if you can figure out what his thinking is, but it does in fact say something a bit jumbled, and perhaps his thinking is a bit jumbled as well. So he says, history is good and bad, you could read it with me, all kinds of things that happen, but I think the story is that because that we were founded differently on different ideas about God-given rights and the way the government, the proper role of people's lives, people have been able to triumph over big, big challenges. I don't fully understand that, but I know where DeSantis is coming from, and I suspect you do as well. Andrew Saudell in our Washington office of Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and that's AU, by the way, abbreviated AU. Christian Nationalism is opposed to a pluralist democracy. Okay? It's the opposite. If we are teaching that the children in public schools, we are not raising good citizens, and it's the opposite of DeSantis. In the end, I believe, we believe, that if we follow the direction and the leadership of Governor DeSantis and this program, we are not raising good citizens. We are raising the antithesis of good citizens. Some of you may, in fact, know Andrew Spar of the Florida Education Association, and that was teaching about religion, and was teaching one way this training skewed to a specific religion, and it mischaracterized. Now, the authors of this program, this initiative, are people of faith who purportedly have dictums like, found in the Exodus chapter 20, thou shalt not bear false witness. So you have to be honest about what you tell. And I'm a rabbi, so I don't know which gospel, but one says, the truth will set you free. And then they go about mischaracterizing the founding of the country. But the founding of this country is based on religion, and the founding of this country actually was based on escaping religious persecution. Spar continues, well, I don't need to tell you that what the founding fathers believed, but the governor's administration, he keeps accusing teachers of indoctrinating kids, but seems to want to put out a civics class in which he's indoctrinating kids. He and the state, the government, are indoctrinating kids. The teachers themselves, the Miami Herald reports, were alarmed. And by the way, we're here to talk about religion, but the role of race in this curriculum is troublesome as well. Not necessarily, it's the concern of all good citizens of the state of Florida, but not necessarily our focus, but we all need to be concerned. So there was a review of 200 pages about the founding fathers' intent and our misconceptions that the founders expected religion to be promoted because they believed it to be essential to civic virtue. So that is to say, there can be no civic virtue, according to this curriculum, unless there is religion. The greatest fear, we the citizens will become licentious. and then become subject to tyranny, and who knows what else will happen to us, and our teeth will fall out, and I don't even want to begin to even spend much more time on this. So another slide talks about Supreme Court cases that shows when the founders' original intent began to change. One of those was, and many of you are much too young to remember 1962, but a few of us noted that when we came back to school in the fall of 1962, all of a sudden, while we had begun every day in my school in Bloomfield, New Jersey, by the way, with the Lord's Prayer and the reading of the Bible, and that no longer was the case because of the decision. Ending school prayer was compared to upholding segregation in this particular curriculum, and it was totally wrongly decided. What will be the future of that decision, given what's going on in the courts today? We don't know. I would urge you not to fall in the trap that when people tell you prayer is forbidden in schools, prayer is not forbidden in schools. And in fact, I can vouch for the fact that as long as there are tests, there will be prayer, because some of us take tests and it takes a prayer to get us through. This, of course, is public, and the power of peer pressure and social pressure to participate in that prayer. I'll leave aside the Bremerton case of the football coach whose private prayer had to be on the 50-yard line of the football field. That's private. And lo and behold, with our current Supreme Court, and we'll talk about this a little bit further, that was upheld. That was considered a private prayer on the 50-yard line of the following a football game. Anyway, so the training itself, $6 million of your money, began at Broward College. By the way, teachers in Hillsborough County, many of you are training this week, although I've forgotten what the date is of this. You can look up I left the URL in. And the problem, of course, as we know, is woke ideologies. I presume we are the holders and the purveyors of woke ideology. I'm not quite sure what that is and don't necessarily need to get into it. So where does this curriculum come from? In general, it comes from a place called Hillsdale College. Anybody ever hear of Hillsdale College? It's a politically influential private Christian college in southern Michigan. And they're working with the DeSantis administration to reshape education in our state. It's to reorient teaching away from indoctrination and back towards education. I happen to, at a graduate school level, study the difference between indoctrination and education. And as someone told me, I will tell you, any one of my education professors can beat the heck out of any of DeSantis's education professors, because DeSantis has never taken an education course. Neither have most of the members of the State Board of Education, and neither has the Education Commissioner, whom I'll introduce you to in just a moment. So they're considered the woke left, and I guess that's me or you, I'm not sure, are a threat. So now, and it's just recently, Richard, I think it pronounces it Corcoran or Corcoran, the Education Committee told the Hillsdale National Leadership Seminar, so it's associated with Hillsdale College, that education is 100% ideological, which is why picking leaders is so crucial. They have to conform an ideology. Don't have to know a damn thing about education, students, children, or anything else. Leaders need to be strategic and quick in implementing policies, make sure they have impact. For those of us, I had the privilege of studying at Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem, Israel, and this kind of statement would have fit beautifully in 1933, 34, 35 Germany. And in fact, on a different level, to truly understand what was going on in Germany in 1933, 1934, 1935, you really could get a good taste for it by examining how our Florida state government is functioning, malfunctioning, not functioning right here today in 2022. Corcoran said, education is our sword. This is a allusion to onward Christian soldiers. In fact, onward Christian soldiers belong, we could sing it right here. Our weapon is education. We can do it, we can get it right. This comes from the playbook of Hermann Göring, by the way, but that's, again, another topic. There's a link where you can read this. I wish I were making this up, but I urge you to check and not take my word on anything. Double check this and make sure you know about it as well. So Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan, 1844, Free Will Baptists. Curriculum was based on Western heritage as a product of Greco-Roman and Christian tradition. A very Christian-oriented college has written this curriculum that you and I are paying for and now paying to have teachers trained to teach in a public school not far from where you are right now, public schools in your own neighborhood. So here's Richard Corcoran, the American politician, whereas he represented Pasco County. He was the state's education commissioner until very recently. And he resides now in Land O'Lakes. His wife, Ann, is active in the Barney Charter School Initiative, which interestingly, his wife is affiliated with Hillsdale College. They have 6 children who are so convinced of the centrality of free public education in our state that those children were homeschooled and then attended classical prep Spring Hill, Florida. That's what a wonderful education commissioner has done for our public schools in the state of Florida. So now let's take a second. That's so far what we know, and it's likely that much more will be revealed about this curriculum, much that I feel comfortable in asserting will make us all feel uncomfortable, even to turn our stomachs. And so it's for us who are here on this call. By the way, we always point in another direction and somebody else will lead us and somebody else will take the helm and somebody else will speak out. Ladies and gentlemen, it's you and me. And it has to begin with you and me. I left out the Margaret Mead quote that you're probably more familiar with than I, that a small group of dedicated people is the only way that change has ever been affected. It takes just us. We have to do something. So I would suggest that we have several avenues in which to respond, and I'm going to critique them in a minute. The courts, the lawsuits, and litigation. We can lobby our legislators. By the way, these are not mutually exclusive. We can try our own case in the court of public opinion. We can also search for an answer at the ballot box, and I'll talk about that, the problem there. And we have avenue number 5. That's one that when I quit talking, which I hope will be soon, I'm going to turn it over to you. And you might have questions for me, but I have questions for you. What would you use? What methods would you use to fight the rise of this curriculum that's you and I are paying for to have taught in our public schools? So let's talk for a second. Hang on, there we go. About law cases. And this has changed very recently. Well, maybe not so recently. today, we are a society. I'm going to repeat what I said to Judy before at 4:45. We are a very litigious society. And you can go to a playground with 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, third graders, and they all say, I'm going to sue. I'm going to sue. We sue everybody. You know? And that may have worked, but we have become, as we know, overly litigious. We turn to the courts for every grievance and every minor thing. Of course, if I slip on a wet floor in a restaurant and I'm not a lawyer, I have no idea, we're going to sue. If I get hot coffee from McDonald's of my own free will and volition and spill it on myself, I can sue McDonald's. Everybody sues. The fact of the matter is that, and even within Americans United for Separation of Church and State and other organizations, and Rick Gold made mention of a lawsuit, the problem today is that if we bring the wrong cases to court, it allows bad judges to make bad law. So now it's time to stop and to think, if we bring this case that we know we are righteous, that we are in the right, that the weight of the law, the weight of reason, the weight of goodness, for some of the weight of God is on our side. But look at the judges who are going to be before us and hear our argument. And we know that it's foolish because we're not going to get a good result. And in fact, we're going to get a result that's going to be cited as precedent in the future against us. Perhaps for Americans United for Separation of Church and State, the best example is the case of, well, it was finally not brought by Americans United, Greece, the city of Greece in New York, Rochester, New York, versus Galloway, and a case where a city council in a small town of Greece began with an invocation, and Galloway and her partner, who were there to get a variance to open some kind of business, didn't stand for the invocation because they didn't believe a city council or city commission meeting should begin with an invocation. And then when they asked for the variance, they were denied. And I thought it might be because they didn't participate in the invocation to Jesus. And so they brought a suit. The city countersued, ultimately taking their case to the Supreme Court. And in it, we lost. We had an argument that city councils should not begin with invocations, particularly religious ones that are so divisive, since we all don't believe the same thing. By the way, don't tell that to Christian and Christian nationalists, but I'm a Jew. I don't believe what Christians believe. Those of you who are not religious at all, and you don't believe, but that's what they believe. In the end, because that case went to the Supreme Court, we got a case that is now cited everywhere by commissions and county commissions, county city councils, that says, oh, we're permitted by Greece v. Galloway to offer invocations at the beginning of our meetings. In fact, that has been used for school board and the zoning commission invocations as well. And those latter two are clearly unconstitutional and not covered by Greece and Galloway, that speak only of legislative bodies. But we brought a case, we had the opportunity to bring a case that would sit before bad judges, and you know who's on the Supreme Court today, and the same thing is going on in the state of Florida. We're not going to get the result we want. And so that is problematic. This I just put in the releases from July 20th, but making it matters even worse is helping us to understand what happens in Florida. Governor Ron DeSantis announces the following appointments and reappointments to the judicial nominating commissions. It goes on to list 50 appointments. Ron DeSantis is, of course, deciding who will be nominated for judgeships here in the state of Florida. And if you think that he's nominating people who are in harmony with our thinking, I have a bridge to Brooklyn I would sell you as well. We know what kind of judges are going to sit on the bench and hear our cases. So we are beginning to approach the stage where we're questioning, we Americans United for Separation of Church and State, we're questioning the wisdom of bringing lawsuits. We know who the judges are. I won't belabor the point. We know who the judges are. We know what the outcome is going to be, and it's not going to be useful for our side. So the next possibility is lobbying legislators. And we could bring lawsuits or not bring lawsuits. You and I, your friends, your neighbors, your family, everybody you know has to begin more effectively to lobby our legislators. If we were live and in person in the same room, I would ask you to raise your hand and give me the name of your Florida state representative. Okay? You need to know that. It is more important than ever. You have a Florida state senator. You need to know who that is. And finally, I discovered, this was a subject of a big debate, how many contacts does your smartphone hold? Okay, and I've heard everything from 2,500 to 25,000, but I think it's something like 10,000, or it doesn't matter. More contacts than you know. So find out who your legislator is and put her or his phone number in your phone. That's for you have a representative and a senator. If you want to do it for the person who represents you in the House of Representatives in Washington, please do so. And for your senator as well, is either Rick Scott and Marco Rubio. They have phone numbers. They may even have a local phone number in your community. Find out enter it into your phone. The same with their email addresses. Know how to contact them. And guess what? It won't cost you a penny to contact them, to call them, to email them. They don't accept texts and faxes anymore. I will tell you that we have done a bit of a study of this, and they generally don't accept fax, but they accept emails. So if you make a phone call to your state representative and send an email and write a letter, it's not such a kosher thing to do or say, but they will think that 3 different people of their constituents have been in touch with them. So you could do all 3. And people in congressional offices have assured us that, believe it or not, if you write your letter out by hand and keep it brief, it will get a little extra attention, because nobody writes hand letters any longer, and it's really unusual for them to receive a letter by hand. And all you need to do is pick up the phone. And I would also ask, and perhaps we could discuss people who are on this Zoom right now, how many of you have been in touch with your elected representative and how it felt to be in touch? But call them and say, I oppose Florida's civic literacy and excellence initiative. I hope you can put a stop, you can help put a stop to it. My name is, and give them your name. Give them they're interested only in your zip code. And why? Because I want to make sure you're one of their constituents and not, but you got to say, I vote. Okay. In the end, if you talk to a live person, and that will not happen all the time, you'll probably talk to a 21 or 22 or 23-year-old intern or somebody wet behind the ears who is simply tallying for and against. And that's why you can keep it short. You can write a long letter. In the end, you're just going to be a mark on a piece of paper or on a computer that says you're for or you're against. But we need to be in touch.
Merrill,
Please.
I might interrupt for a moment. On our website, we have a link to where you can find out, anyone can find out who their representatives are. And it will take them to there's a place in the Florida Senate and the Florida House where you can fill in your address, and it will tell you who represents you, no matter where you live in Florida. I encourage people, I have it in every email I send out.
Thank you. And I urge you, I join my voice to yours, Judy, and to the group. And I don't want to sound adversarial or hostile, but if you haven't contacted, you can say you're for this, but if you haven't contacted your representative, not very convincing. It doesn't cost a thing. And by the way, once, of course, the phone number is in the memory, you can call them about anything you'd like. You can call them about the war in Ukraine. You can talk to them about global warming or, climate change. You can talk to them about anything. We are not in touch enough with our legislators. Now, I'll tell you who are in charge. And those are people who give big campaign contributions, corporate interests, large organizations, and we are doing nothing. We need to speak up. If we do not have our voice heard, we'll get what we deserve. And I could go on and on about that. I think I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Third, the court of public opinion is not like the courts in the state of Florida or the federal courts. Try your hand at writing a letter to the editor, no matter how small the paper is. People actually read letters to the editor, believe it or not. Try a longer op-ed piece about this program to indoctrinate our kids, making them believe that we were founded as a Christian country. If you have speakers in an organization, invite a journalist to your organization for a program called How to Write a Letter to the Editor or an Op-Ed Piece. Somebody from the paper will be happy to come and give you pointers. And by the way, ultimately, they're going to say what's shorter is better. Some of you have access or listen to call-in radio shows. Okay? It's often a bunch of nutcases on them, and it's hard to listen to, but pick up the phone, wait in line. By the way, have something else you're reading or doing or eating your breakfast cereal or eating a sandwich, but they'll put you on hold. Eventually, you may get on the air to talk about this initiative to convince our students and to teach our students that America is a Christian country.
Merrill, if I can interrupt just again. We actually have two people, or well, 2.5, Jim helps every once in a while, who have a radio program on the air.
Great.
And I don't think we would have a problem. I think we can convince them maybe to have an episode about this.
Okay, great. I mean, it's really one way that we can reach the public and teach them. And you saw those memes. We need to have them know that Adams and the Senate ratified language in 1802 that said, we are not a Christian country. You need to let them know about how Thomas Jefferson felt, how James Madison. Now, yes, these are people who had faults and they owned slaves and they made mistakes and they did terrible things, but this was not ours was not founded as a Christian country. Now, I am more convinced than ever that our answer will be, what, August 23rd and November, whatever, there's early voting and vote by mail. I think our answer is at the ballot box. We have elected the wrong people. Now, there's a problem for your organization and mine, and it's listed here under the federal code. It's also called the Internal Revenue Service Code, section 501c3. And you don't have to read the whole thing, but I can get it for you. You write your membership checks. Maybe I should make a big pitch. Costs $12 to be part of this organization. You want to become part of this organization for a mere $12. It'll make you feel better. It's an important thing. And you get to deduct that from your taxes if you itemize in your taxes. In addition, the organization doesn't pay taxes on its income. But there is one requirement, and this is the problem. It's also called the Johnson Amendment after Lyndon Johnson and goes back to the 1950s, I believe, that the organization does not participate in or intervene, like publishing or distributing statements, and on any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. So under the umbrella of all the organizations that we're part of, we cannot intervene on behalf of or for or against a political candidate. So we have to step outside the role of our membership and create our own clubs, our own organization, our own Facebook page, our own social media presence, and so on. And in that way, as individuals, advocate for the person who is correct. We can't sit on the sidelines in these elections and let the right that is so very organized put in candidates who believe that we're a Christian nation, that Florida is a Christian state, that the Constitution works best for people who are Christian. We need to oppose them, and we can't do it as our current organizations, but we certainly need to try to get those people out of office and our kind of people in office. In some of those cases, and it's here in Flagler County, maybe in your county as well, some of those people are so ensconced, nobody's running against them. Well, I want to urge you to think about running for office if that's the case. And you'll notice that this battle is taking place on the level of school boards as well. School boards are nonpartisan elections. It is relatively easy to run for school board, but if your state representative is a Christian nut, is a right-wing evangelical Christian, and it's not being opposed, consider go to your supervisor of elections website, the state supervisor of election website if need be, and find out what it takes for you to run for office. That's the only way we're going to succeed. So finally, with that, I will end and turn it over to you. And you're welcome to have questions for me, but I'd like to hear from you. What's the most effective way we can put a stop to the Florida Civic Literacy Excellence Initiative so that our public schools will not teach that we are a Christian nation? With that, I'd love to hear from you. I'll take all the questions I am most grateful that you have given me this time and attention for this very, very important issue. Judy, do you want to call on people? Would you like me to call on people? Judy, do you care? You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. If you would stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
I highlighted you, unless you want to talk about, we can bring it back up in a minute if you want, or do you want to go ahead and talk about this?
I just want to make mention that Operation Higher Court is part of the Christian Nationalist movement, and they want to wine and dine Thomas and Alito. Scalia has now passed away, but the situation is worse. Here they are in front of the Supreme Court, and they believe the cross belongs there. I'll quit sharing the screen. We go to the gallery view, and then I'll be to, let's go start with Alexander and go to Joe after that. Alexander, unmute, and your question is more than welcome.
Thank you, Merrill.
I haven't heard your question yet, but it's welcome. And then we'll go to Joe and Rick.
While you were speaking about the previous item, number 4, I wanted to just very quickly read a quick story for everybody.
Please.
A pastor in Tennessee just announced that his church is no longer tax exempt after a bunch of TikTok users submitted complaints to the IRS because that pastor went on a rabid rant at his church on a Sunday and said that Democrats can't be Christian and you ain't seen an insurrection yet. So I'm going to post in the chat below for everybody a forum where if anybody or your friends or family know somebody who is abusing their tax exempt status as a church or as a organization, that you should submit the way these people did And now that church has to pay taxes because it has ceased to be a non-political entity under the law. So it's called tax exempt organization complaint or referral. And the good thing is, folks, in our world of doxing and people going after people online, there's a checkbox that says, I'm concerned that I might face retaliation or retribution if my identity is disclosed. So you can check that box and feel somewhat secure that somebody from that organization that you are reporting for politicking will most likely not know you and be able to go after you, which I think is like a whistleblower thing. We need to be able to use the court of public opinion and these tools from our IRS to make sure that churches and other organizations who are saying one side is bad, one side is sinful, evil, that's a form of politicking that needs to stop. And I think we need to report it. We can do it almost anonymously. We can do it safely. And it looks like, based on this Tennessee pastor's church, the IRS is watching out for people that violate the law. Maybe it'll take certain people years to be charged and indicted from the previous administration. But as you said, at the church level, the school board level, with prayers, the coach, the sports level, that's where we know we can hear about things locally and submit these kind of forms.
Thank you, Alexander. I will tell you as well, you can go to the front page, www.au for Americans United, as in separation of church and state, au.org. At the bottom, there's a place to click that say report a violation. And you can also do that. These are not mutually exclusive. It's not one or the other, do both. When you report a violation, like the one Alexander cited, we joke, a little bell rings on the desk of an attorney in our office by the name of Ian Smith. And then when the bell rings, he begins to salivate, and the letters and complaints will be followed through by our legal staff. We have to speak up. We have to let this know. We have been responsible for lifting the 501c3 status of a church near Binghamton, New York, that took out a billboard on New York Route 17 that said, if you vote for Bill Clinton, you're going to go to hell, or something like that. All of a sudden, the people who had deducted their donations to that church had to refile, and their donations were not tax deductible. Church ultimately went out of business. Christian Coalition and their little cards that you took into the Bible, we also had their 501c3 status lifted as well. Don't be silent. So let's go to Joe, then Rick, and Great Scott in that order. Joe.
Yes, regarding what we can do at the ballot box, there is a candidate for school board in Pinellas County who is running as a moderate, it's a man, against two female opponents, neither of whom knows very much about education at all, let alone administration, whereas this man has 33 years of experience. I guess I can say his name on this form. His name is Carl Zimmerman. So if you live in Pinellas County, Florida, August 23rd, there's a candidate who very closely mirrors our views on the subjects we've discussed. Second, very quick point, not a question, and that is that people who want us to understand that we are a Christian nation often cite the phrase that we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. What they fail to note is that that is not the law of the land. That's from the Declaration of Independence, which is nothing more than a letter. The law of the land doesn't say anything at all about inalienable rights from on high.
Yes, thank you. And the founders matured from the time of the writing of the Declaration of Independence till when we get to the Articles of Confederation, and of course the Constitution, which says you can't establish a religion. Okay? And there can be no religious test for people who hold office. The times changed, they matured, no mention of the Creator. It just does not hold water, and we need to call them out on that. Rick, and then Great Scott.
Merrill, I wanted to say that I forgot to bring up the fact that you appeared in a few of the panels sponsored by Jews for a Secular Democracy. We really appreciate it, and particularly your focus on addressing the problems of school vouchers and their abuse in religious schools, which we're seeing more and more today. Regarding civic education, about a year and a half ago, Jews for a Secular Democracy asked for citizens to complain about efforts by the Florida Department of Education to put in place a new civic education curriculum that was a little bit more open, open towards religion in the public sector. And I'm not sure whether that evolved into what we have today, but it would be very interesting to compare what is in the Department of Education's requirements for civic education with this training program.
Yeah, I think we need to educate ourselves. Exactly. Thank you, Rick. And yes, that's this is not about private school vouchers and so on, and the fact that you in your taxation are paying people who you are paying teachers in schools to teach that slavery, as the slave trade before the Civil War, was a good thing. You're paying for that slavery was good. Why? Because it brought pagan blacks from Africa here to the United States, where they could be baptized in the name of Jesus Christ. You are paying for that. And if you are silent, if we're anywhere silent, we'll get what we deserve. And yes, thank you, Rick, for the opportunity to participate in those forums as well. Let's go on to Great Scott, please.
Hi. I put in a couple of comments. One is the phone number of the switchboard, of the congressional switchboard. Number two was a YouTube link for Ron DeSantis going around and handing out money as though he is giving it to you, and it is the money that Joe Biden signed into law, and that is what he is receiving. And I wanted to address something that someone else addressed also. I don't mean it in a mean or just vein, but you did mention the lady who was burned at McDonald's,
Yeah,
and got $1 million. She never collected the $1 million. She was sold coffee that was 180 degrees. She got instantaneous third-degree burns over her pubic vagina and anus, and had to have surgery on that, skin graft surgery that cost, back in the 70s, cost $180,000. McDonald's offered her $800. So she went to court, and all she asked them for was to pay for her medical bills and lower the temperature of their coffee. And they never did it. And they had been sued several times previous to that. And when I say several, I mean at least 12. So that was not a frivolous lawsuit.
okay.
She had good reason to sue them.
I apologize for using that as an example, but we do know that we all tend to resort to litigation, and with the kind of judges we're going to find on the bench today, litigation is not going to work. Thank you, Great Scott. Yeah, you know, please be in touch with and find out who's running for school board here in our county. We have somebody who has been on the school board who wants to ban and all books referring to homosexuality, and in fact referred one of them to the sheriff as it was criminal of the librarian to shelve it in the library of a high school. At any rate, Jim and then Amy.
There we are. Well, thank you very much for your very insightful commentary. and very stimulating suggestions. One of the things that we really need to do, I think, is to make friends. That is, that we ought to find other organizations in which we may be participating and which have a meaningful role in public life. Things like the NAACP, for instance, and various other not necessarily left or political institutions, but simply other groups to which we might belong, who may not be aware of the significance of what's happening. And perhaps if some of us would like to exercise our public speaking abilities, this will be one opportunity that we should not pass up. So
I agree entirely, and in fact, would urge you to program in the coming months with local LGBTQ and pride organizations, because we know that when you say it's a Christian country, we know what they think, and say, what do they and we have in common? Let's talk about our common ground. And the same thing now holds for organizations promoting the right of women to control over their own bodies. And that's a religious issue as well. And we need to work together. We need as well, and the ACLU in Volusia County, Daytona Beach area, has started an initiative where they are going to table at gun shows. That's crazy, but the truth of the matter is we all talk to each other and we know how we feel, and we need to reach out to some of the other people as well. Thank you, Jim. Let's go to Amy.
Hi. I guess my thought is that I've already got Rubio and Scott on my phone.
Great.
And every time that I have emailed them, I get back a form letter, saying we're concerned for all citizens, really don't address the issue that I am writing them about. So I've gotten a little discouraged there, and it has also put me on their mailing list as like a supporter. So in a way, I'm kind of like, well, maybe that's not bad to see what they're going out there and preaching. And DeSantis, he's got some really good stuff for his supporters out there. And I actually recommend everybody to do that, to see what their strategy is, and how they're fundraising and so forth. Because as a Democrat or a progressive, we tend not to want to read their literature because we know it's all bunk, but it's also forewarned, forearmed, that kind of thing. What else is coming up on his schedule that he's going to try to do, and so on. Another thing that I'm going Monday for my poll worker training. Great. And I'm going to be a poll worker. Now you have to start off as what they call a deputy, and then you can move up to clerk and so forth. And maybe I will for the general election in November. I might be a clerk, but they also have, applications to be poll watchers. And, that's when you can go out in your Florida Atheist t-shirt and say, I'm interested in, how you voted, and people don't have to answer, of course, but, to see that, other people can see us. I think there's a lot of people out there that just don't know organizations exist that will fight for their values.
Exactly. So. Thank you. By the way, I imagine my wife is in the next room applauding you, Amy. She says, we got to watch Fox TV. And that's really tough for some of us and tough for me. But you know what? We gotta learn and hear what they say. It is true. And I have thousands of responses, form letters responding to my inquiries. And I try and use the word rabbi and think that I'll get more attention. But they respond pro forma and a meaningless response. That does not change the fact that we need to speak up. And in fact, there'll still be your input will still be recorded, is supposed to be recorded. And if it's not, tell all your friends that, this person is not responding and might be crossing the line of the 501c3 strictures about engaging in partisan politics. But tell your friends, tell your family, this is the kind of response I've gotten. I don't see any other hands raised. I'll turn it back to Judy.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll still be taking questions for a while. I actually wrote a letter to the editor of Tampa Bay Times, and they didn't print it. So I'm going to take your advice and have somebody come in and tell us how to write it. I've had lots of letters printed before, but not this one. And I was very disappointed because one of the things that I took on was their use of a Christian minister who was the one who said that you can't be virtuous citizen without God, who had nothing to do with government or the Constitution or anything. He was a Calvinist minister. Very, anyway. I sent a letter to everybody I know about that article. And also, I found the speech that they, from which they quoted Frederick Douglass, his 4th of July speech, and shared that with people because it was an excellent speech. I don't know if you've ever read the 4th of July speech that they took the quote from, but it really took the Christian religion to, the fundamentalist Christian religion to task for their position on slavery. And because although it does say in the Bible that slavery is okay.
By the way, I know a little bit about the Bible. I would argue with that, but that's also another place, something for another time.
Yes.
But you raise an important question, and I'd ask you, Judy, and I'd ask everyone. Those who see their role in this battle as wielding a sword and going off to battle and singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers," you think they are discouraged if a letter gets rejected by
no, I'm not discouraged. Right?
They're discouraged by getting a form letter that's not responsive? Do you think they are easily discouraged? They are not.
Right.
And we need to, and perhaps we need to gather more often. I'll volunteer myself to reinforce each other.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
We need to speak up, even in the face of the stonewalling that we so often, unfortunately, get.
I get people saying, why should I vote? Because it's not going to matter, or why should I write? Because they're not going to care. But my argument is, if we don't do it, then they think everybody agrees with it.
Yeah. We have to participate. We
Yeah.
have to speak up. If we are silent, you know what? There's an element here again, and I'm going to go hard back to Holocaust education. What was there were people who there were victims. There were people who perpetrated horrors, and the bystanders were the key. We cannot be bystanders. We
Exactly.
be silent. We need to speak up. Otherwise, we are guilty.
Yeah.
It's kind of, Judy, do I have time to turn to Joe, or you want to turn to Joe?
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Joe?
Well, yes, as to the Christian fundamentalists describing themselves as being the sword of God and so on, it's Jesus himself that says, "Think not that I have come to bring peace, I have come with the sword." That's from the New Testament. You might be less familiar with that.
By the way,
it is, by the way, probably one of the only prophecies of the Bible that actually did come true.
Yeah. And I would, it's a personal bugaboo. That's in the Second Testament, not the New Testament. The second, okay, but that's for another time as well.
No, I'll go for that.
Okay. And when I really get upset, I call it the secondary, that ours, the first is the primary, that makes yours the secondary. I try not to be so hostile or adversarial, but from time to time. Again, I'll turn it back to you, Judy.
Rick, you wanted to say something, Rick Gold?
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm real concerned about the rise of Moms for Liberty and other groups like them that are reflecting the Christian nationalist point of view, but turning it into a grassroots type of enterprise and focus particularly at the school boards. But who knows where they'll go after that. But it seems to me that it provides a very important opportunity for folks who are really supporting separation of church and state to pack the school board meetings as well. And if we don't have the numbers, come in with posters, with signs, and just make it known that we're there.
Let me underscore what Rick is saying, but you may not know it, but you can go to a school board meeting, your school board meeting, you get 3 minutes of time that you can speak. And the same is true at your county commission as well. Try it. And in the case of Moms for Liberty, I urge you to find out what the total budget of your schools in that county amount to. Then please find out, and it's not too difficult, what the census shows is the percentage of the population of your county that have school-age children in it. In Flagler County, we found that we have a $211 million, and we're small. We have a $211 million annual budget. Households with parents pay 1/6 of the taxes. And therefore we are arguing, and so that's nothing to do with religion, we are arguing you get 1/6 of the say. They want 100% of the say, but only pay for 1/6 of the cost of running the schools. And so we have, if you can look for a non-religious argument and one that's logical, by the way, it smacks of socialism, not that socialism is so bad, and communism, you can, by the way, you can use that and they won't understand it anyway. But this idea that you amount to you pay 1/6 of the cost of our schools and you think you should get 6/6 of the say is just not American. At any rate, well, it says Chuck and Penny. That looks like Penny.
Yeah.
To
Chuck is over in the corner. Go ahead, Chuck
Yeah.
and Penny.
You know, I just wanted to say we actually relocated from Ohio. And so we still read the Columbus Dispatch, which is the paper that comes from the state government city, actually. And when the Attorney General came out on Fox News and said that the 10-year-old who went to Indiana, that was a false story. And obviously he didn't know what he was talking about. The Columbus Dispatch got so many letters to the editor, really criticizing him and his behavior, that they took out like full pages to print those letters. So letters to the editor, I really believe do matter. And we have been letter writers, for a long time. So I just want to say that, I think. And the other thing that happens, and this happens for me, when I read letters that are well thought out and represent a more rational position, I feel better. So, I mean, it helps me to write them, but it also helps me to read them.
Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, in an area where Jim Jordan is one of the representatives, that's a real problem. Even John Kasich looks good at the moment, but you'll have to all excuse me while I talk to Penny. Penny, where in Ohio?
We moved from Columbus.
Where in Columbus? My wife and I are Bexley people. Where are you from?
Oh, okay. We lived in Clintonville.
Okay. From up by Northwest Broadway and Northeast Broadway.
Yeah.
Street. Fine. Thank you. Were you Ohio State people?
We were. I actually worked in the counseling center, and Chuck worked in state government there.
That's all I need to know. You have to excuse us as Buckeyes. We have a discussion. Alexander.
I'll be really quick since I spoke before. I just want to remind everybody, I'm 49, so I'm probably still one of the younger ones attending today. Maybe I'm wrong. But I want to point out that people my age, most people my age, Generation X, have not picked up or bought a newspaper in a long time. Some people that live in New York City do get the New York Times every day delivered. That's rare compared to most of the country and Florida. So to just use newspaper is not the answer. And people younger than me don't even watch cable TV. So they're not seeing the two things that we in this room think are the usual methods of communication. It's Facebook, it's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's other social media and websites. A lot of the right wingers have been on these websites. They don't bother watching the news or reading newspapers they think are liberal biased. So we, as we go toward a younger crowd in our group and in this country, in this state, we have to be able to do something besides just write a letter to a newspaper that only people 60 plus are reading. Now, I know in Florida, that's an average age, but in other parts of the country and in other parts of Florida, younger people are not picking up newspapers or turning on, CNN, MSNBC, or even Fox. So I just want to point out that when we do our kind of talks like this, we have to make sure we definitely include the new media and social media. Thank you.
I'm Alex Zander. I couldn't agree 200%. In fact, I often teach and I often ask, you'll have to excuse me as I put on my rabbi hat, this business of wandering around the desert for 40 years till a generation dies out, says that's to teach us that baby boomers need to let go. And in fact, we look at the age of the presidential candidates of the last election, we may be looking at the same thing. And
they don't need to let go.
Yeah.
They need to learn how to use their smartphones and their tablets.
But there are people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s whom we need to involve, and we don't even speak the same language. So you're Alexander. This is a problem facing many different organizations, and if we're not sensitive to it,
right. The right wing has already figured out how to harness websites and social media so that some of those faces on January 6th were younger than me. How did they know? Because they were linked in. They were linked into all these social sites. We liberals, progressives, atheists have got to do better.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
If you are pleased with our programs, please tap the like button and then subscribe to our channel. Don't forget the bell so you don't miss any notices of new material. We usually post new content every week. See our created playlists to discover events thus far this year, or to see a list of topics and speakers from our rapidly growing and diverse collection since 1992.